Good morning and welcome to another webisode of All Politics Are Local. I'm WSAV digital reporter John Dowding. Every week we take the time to break down the local impact of news coming from Washington, D.C. with one of our reporters from Capitol Hill. Let's jump right in. The impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump moves into a new phase today. The final arguments on impeachment, the House Judiciary Committee, I should say, will hear evidence presented by lawyers from both parties, Democrat and Republican. The committee's chair, Jerry Nadler, says Democrats have a solid case for impeachment.
We have a very rock-solid case. I think the case we have, if presented to a jury, would be a guilty verdict in about 3 minutes flat.
Vote in the Judiciary Committee to impeach is expected as soon as this week, according to sources who spoke with CNN. The House Judiciary Committee released a report Saturday laying out historical arguments for impeachment. It says it lays the groundwork for today's hearing, where House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees will present their evidence. The document does not accuse President Donald Trump of committing impeachable offenses. And joining us live from Capitol Hill is WSAV Washington correspondent Kellie Meyer. Good morning, Kellie. How are you doing?
Good morning, John. I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. All right, let's jump into this because there's so much that's been going on the last week. I know I'm kind of lost through all of the different hearings and the different people that we've been seeing on the special reports the last two weeks. So let's go into this. Where are we in the process of impeachment?
Yeah, and that's a great point. There has been so much happening here in this building behind me in these past couple weeks. So exactly, we could kind of get up to speed here. So right now, what's happening this morning is the process in the House Judiciary Committee. And what you've been seeing in previous weeks has been in the House Intelligence Committee. So what we saw last Wednesday was it shifting over into the Judiciary Committee for the first hearing. Now we are having the second one this morning. This is where we're hearing, like you said, from the majority counsel and the minority counsel. Hearing and presenting the evidence to members of the judiciary. So we will be going through that this morning. But from here, where we go now, this really is kind of what they're calling the final stretch. This will be basically the final hearings that we're seeing as we're leading up to this possible vote on the articles of impeachment, which Speaker Nancy Pelosi brought up last Thursday that they will be drafting articles of impeachment. So these final hearings will be kind of deciding what they will put into that draft, what they will include in that massive articles of impeachment.
So then going back to, you just mentioned Speaker Pelosi's announcement last week. Why does any of what she said matter last week? She said that, they can start drafting articles of impeachment, but why does one, what she said matter in the grand scheme of things? And two, does it really have any validity since we still have to go through a Senate trial?
Right, and I think what she said on Thursday, it was a big moment. It was a historic piece of the puzzle, a big part of moving forward in this process. It really meant that they are going to go forward and draft these articles of impeachment moving forward to possibly impeach the president in the House. So it is a big step. It's a historic and monumental step that they made on Thursday that they plan to go forward. They could have withdrew. They could have said, no, we won't be drafting, but they decided to go forward. So it was a pretty big moment there on Thursday. So now as we're looking forward, there may be a vote on this happening probably by next week. And you have to remember, we only have a few short weeks before they break for Christmas. That's only 2 weeks away. So they only have a limited time to do this. Of course, they can go into 2020, but they really want to have this vote before the holiday recess. So they're kind of going at this warp speed. As like you were saying, it's kind of hard to keep up on all of the hearings happening because they are going through this pretty quickly. But like you said, it will be moving into the Senate where we're expected to have the trial, and where it goes from there, it could just be stalled with Republican resistance in the Senate and really not go anywhere from there. But as far as the House, they're looking to go forward with this vote.
So just recapping all of this, House side, committee meetings and different things like that, hearings, that's kind of wrapping up now. And then they may vote on it before the Christmas break, the House at least. So coming into the new year, we could expect, again, this is a rough estimate, we could expect a Senate trial starting in January.
Absolutely, and we heard last week that the Senate released their schedule. So we're able to see, when they're going to be working here in Congress, when they're going to be back in the district, and January is completely blank for the Senate. So if that gives any insight into what they're expecting, they really don't even know what they're expecting, but they left that whole schedule blank because they don't know when they're even going to be here or how long they may be here for that trial.
Okay, well, I mean, one last point about impeachment before we move on to the other topics we have for this morning. What are some of our local reps saying? Obviously, Representative Doug Collins from Georgia is the ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee, so we hear from him every morning. But what are some other local reps saying from the Hill?
You know, it's generally been the same. I know we've been talking about this for the past couple of weeks. The response from Republicans and Democrats has pretty much been consistent throughout this time. From Republicans, we're hearing that there's not enough there to impeach him. They don't think that there is going to be any need to do this, really. They say it's a sham process. They will be voting against it if it comes to the floor, I'm sure. So what Speaker Nancy Pelosi was saying, why she didn't want to go into the impeachment process, was she wanted it to be bipartisan. She wanted impeachment to be bipartisan. But what we're looking at now is a divided House, really, and it's only getting more divided as we go through these hearings. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing in the first judiciary hearing with Representative Collins, like you mentioned, they're calling to kind of push it off or say, you know, we need more here. You know, there's a lot of back and forth. It was even happening just this morning as I was watching before I started talking with you now. It's a lot of divisiveness, and it seems to be only getting more so like that as we go forward in this process.
Okay, well, let's switch gears right now. There's still so much with impeachment, and we'll hear more in the coming weeks. But now let's look ahead at the 2020 race. More visitors have been frequenting the Palmetto state the last few weeks.
Hello, Charleston!
And you see right there, Democratic candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren is in Charleston, and Sunday she was there in Charleston for a town hall. She says whoever emerges from the primary will have to appeal to Republicans who have become disenchanted with President Donald Trump. She also answered questions about whether Americans are ready for an all-female ticket in 2020. All right, so she wasn't the only one there recently, and we'll talk about this really briefly. Mayor Pete Buttigieg was also in Bluffton just last week doing a forum with Latino voters about their policy issues and what they're looking for in a candidate. So why are so many more candidates flocking to the Palmetto state and feeling the pressure to gain support there?
You know, I think this is really the first state that may give that indication of how the African-American vote will go. There's a majority, like we saw in 2016, a majority of Democrats that came out to vote that were African-American. So these candidates are trying to appeal to those voters in that block, trying to get their vote, like you saw with Elizabeth Warren, visiting historically black colleges, things like that. And I think also because South Carolina happened just before the big Super Tuesday, so kind of keeping that momentum going, they're going to see that indicator in that vote, and then as they go into Super Tuesday, what might happen. So it's kind of a big indicator in a lot of things heading forward into 2020, and it's always been this one state that you really look out for and see where they're going to sway.
Yeah. It definitely has it's definitely a very influential state, and we'll see who keeps coming back and visiting in the coming weeks. But thank you so much, Kelly. We know it's a big day, so we got to let you get back to all the big news going on on the Capitol Hill right now. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And we will see Kelly again next week. Remember, News 3 is your local election headquarters, so make sure you stick with News 3 for the very latest online and on air this election season. I'm John Dowding. We'll see you again next week on All Politics Are Local.